guys. We are here for another episode, another show of Main Stage Wrestling.
Boom.
Right, boom indeed, right here on WERW Real College Radio. I'm Jacy and I am flanked by
Sam Gelfand. It has been a little while, but we are finally back.
I did some research, as I tend to do for this show, and
You're in the Main Stage zone.
Yes, it's been 1 month to the day since we broadcast Main Stage Wrestling right here out of the studio. Out of any studio, really. We don't do this anywhere else, I don't think.
Not to my knowledge.
No, not
What's
to my
KC Coke doing in the Impact Zone?
Wow, how dare you. But, guys, it's an exciting show. We have a lot of news to get to in the world of professional wrestling, as we tend to do on this show. And also, this past Sunday was the big Wild Zero ceremony show, their collaboration with Beyond Wrestling, which went incredibly.
It went absolutely fantastically. It was an amazing night. Beyond Wrestling Talent, we had a Chikara showcase. Joey Ryan showed up.
He did indeed, and he performed just as incredibly as he tends to do. And not only that, but also the next Wild Zero show is also announced, which will be taking place when, Sam?
They actually just changed the
Yeah,
date.
because it's on Mother's Day, right? Originally,
Yeah, they changed it to the week after that. So I think it's
good.
May 18th now.
Oh gosh, so then we definitely can't be there for it.
Yeah, neither of us are going to be there, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, but if you're here in the Syracuse area, absolutely go ahead and attend. If you're
However, I have heard rumblings that the next Wild Zero show after that will be in late August, in which we would be here.
Wow.
It would be right at the start of the new semester.
And you know that's a pretty long hiatus to go on if you're Wild Zero, if you're the people making decisions there. And I think what it has to be is that we're just so vital to the show, we're so vital to the program that they're making sure that they don't go 2 shows in a row without us. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, it's not like the audience would forget about us anyway.
No, not at all. I don't think so.
No, we're too memorable.
So. Yeah, I would absolutely think that's the case. But you know what else is memorable, Sam? Our social media is memorable, of course, obviously, so go ahead and find us at Mainstage SU on Instagram and Twitter.
Not that we have to remind you, we're just doing it as a courtesy.
Yeah, no common courtesy from the two of us, and yeah, go there, Twitter, Instagram again, at MainStageSU to keep updated on everything Mainstage, because if you weren't following us on there, you probably wouldn't know that we're broadcasting right now, because we've been gone for a month. So again, it's very important that you follow us there. So, Sam, I think it's about time that we finally get into some talk about wrestling, don't you think?
Let's move right into it.
I think so. So, Sam, WrestleMania season, the road to WrestleMania is in full gear. It's in full swing right now, and as tends to be the case when this is the time of the year, matches get announced for WrestleMania. Isn't that so?
And as is tradition, we are on the road to WrestleMania. We are in the left lane, and there's some old dude doing 65 and a 75.
That's about right. That's unfortunately the course, and he's about this this proverbial 65-mile-per-hour man is about to crash into the roadblock that is Baron Corbin. Because
you mean the roadblock end of the line?
Oh no, I do not mean that. That's a whole different show that I'm very happy doesn't exist anymore. But Kurt Angle has announced that he will be retiring at WrestleMania, as we've known for the past few weeks at this point. And he's finally announced his opponent after weeks of speculation, after the wrestling world has gone just insane speculating about who Kurt Angle will be facing in his last ever match, the man to end this legendary career. It's been revealed that his opponent is none other than, as I said, Mr. End of Days himself, Baron Corbin. And Sam, I want to get your thoughts on this. What's your immediate reaction to Baron being announced as Kurt's opponent?
My immediate reaction was, yeah, but... Because it makes sense. I will give it that. They've been setting up this match for... Actually, there's a decently long-term arc that has been played out here.
Do you think they were setting up the match, or it just sort of fell into place? Yeah, I think that's what tends to happen with long-term storytelling there.
It does make sense. It's just not how it would feel... It should go down, especially because I understand the thinking, you might want to put over Baron Corbin with the retiring Kurt Angle, but you've also just had Baron Corbin spend the last few months losing to everyone and anyone.
To be fair, you've had Kurt Angle also losing to anyone and everyone the last few months.
That's true.
So if you get 2 losers and you put them in the ring together, it's still some sort of contest.
Then it becomes WWE main event.
I think so. But
I agree with the idea that it should be John Cena. I do think it's a good way to come full circle, although personally, I also think that they perhaps should have saved Chad Gable for WrestleMania. Have the two Olympians go at it.
See, now while I thought that would have been interesting, Chad Gable has really such like a minuscule role on WWE television that 3 weeks before WrestleMania to put him in the showcase match would be really strange. I wouldn't put it past WWE to do that, and I do love Chad Gable and the majority of his matches, save for this past Monday. But I think that would have been cool just as a match, because I love Chad Gable, and that would be awesome. But I almost prefer Baron over Chad in that there is an actual story there, and it'll be more compelling as far as hooking the general fans' interest. And also, I do agree that Cena would have been a cool option, because that obviously would have... You're having some struggles with your chair, I see.
My chair is really weird today. It just decided to lower on its own, and the back is forcing me forward.
Oh no. Very, very frightening. But
I am being forced to be on the edge of my seat.
Wow. You are indeed. That tends to happen
just
right here
just like a member of the WWE universe.
That's right, especially on the fast lane to WrestleMania, where we are right now. And I was saying I would agree that Cena would be a bigger spectacle and it would have been cool, but Cena can be used elsewhere on the card and have an even bigger match, I feel, because the Kurt Angle match at WrestleMania, it's not gonna be an incredible matchup, I don't think. Kurt, just watch his performance this past week on Raw. He's not putting on any 5-star classics at this point in his career.
No, unfortunately, his body's broken, and fortunately for him, he's off the painkillers, which is great, but it also means that he feels it a little bit more.
Yeah, so,
Perhaps what they should have done is what they do in Japan for most retirement matches, is just do a tag team match.
Yeah, that would have been cool. Something similar to KO, Sammy, Daniel, Shane from last year.
Perhaps then you could have had Kurt Angle and Chad Gable team up,
for
instance.
See, that would have been really interesting, because then it doesn't matter that Chad's as small of a character, and he's also so ingrained in the tag team wrestling scene in WWE that it would have made a lot more sense. That would have been cool, and it definitely would have helped in hiding a lot of Kurt's weaknesses at this point in his career. But I just sort of figure at this point, the match is going to be, I don't want to say disappointing, but it's... because I'm not going in with these high expectations of, oh my god, Kurt Angle's going to have this incredible match to retire with. So, again, it's not going to be disappointing, but I know it's not going to be this amazing match. So, I'm not that disappointed Baron Corbin's in there, because Baron also isn't one to put on these 5-star classics. He's great in the ring, and he's great at doing what his job is, and that's infuriating the fans, and I love him for it. So, I almost feel like it's a good enough pick, because you don't want to have someone as great as Chad Gable go in there and have a stinker on his first huge match at WrestleMania, and you don't want Cena to go in there and have another match reminiscent of last year with Undertaker. So I think Baron was probably the smartest move. And again, there is enough storytelling where I am interested, and also I would say that I would be very disappointed if Kurt Angle wins.
I can agree with that. What was I about to say? I lost my train of thought.
Well, your chair is it's bouncing up and down throughout the entirety of the show.
How can you concentrate when you're on the edge of your seat?
Yes. Yeah, it's a very difficult thing to do.
No, I did hear... Actually, before that, what I was going to say is that you will hear later in our show exactly what happens when you have someone who is far past their prime trying to put on a decent retirement match.
Yeah. Two people well past their prime, really. Yeah.
As our match of the week is Bret Hart versus Mr. McMahon at WrestleMania 26.
It's been a month since we announced that, so I don't blame the main stage audience if they've forgotten. But
which is why I've reminded them now.
That is indeed the match that we'll be covering later on in the show.
But I have heard rumors, rumblings, dirt sheets, as
More
always.
Rumblings?
More rumblings.
Oh my gosh.
Not quite royal rumblings, but just
we're past
rumblings.
That. Again, we're on the road to WrestleMania. We're not at the beginning anymore. We're well into it, just weeks away.
No, the Royal Rumble is just a highway on-ramp.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I have heard rumblings that WWE heard the crowd reaction that Baron Corbin received upon being announced as Kurt Angle's mystery opponent at WrestleMania.
So this is some of your inside scoops.
Well, I mean, as inside as I read Reddit can be.
Okay, fair enough.
But apparently they are possibly reconsidering the whole Baron Corbin as the opponent. It was supposed to be the set idea, this is going to be Kurt Angle's opponent, but now they're thinking maybe we should change it up in the next 3 weeks.
I'm confused by that. Why Do you mean the crowd reaction in the arena or the fan reaction online?
I think all of the above.
Okay, because the reaction in the arena wasn't bad. Like, the worst possible reaction would be for the fans to just sit on their hands and not do anything. But they were booing Baron. Like, he was accomplishing what he was meant to do. It wasn't supposed to be like a huge, like, raucous, like, massive applause when they found out that Baron's fighting Kurt Angle, you know?
Yeah, no, of course not. But at the same time, we're in a different stage of professional wrestling where you have to consider what the fans want as much as what will get heat.
I don't know.
You're at this point, you're not just setting up what's going to be a good story. You have to set up what's going to be a good match.
Nothing is going to be a good match. I've already said that. This is the best possible scenario, I think, as a match goes, because, again, you have the story. You have the idea that Baron sort of screwed Kurt out of his role as general manager, and then Kurt sort of worked to screw Baron out of his role as general manager, and they've just been going back and forth, like, bickering with one another and sort of costing each other their livelihoods. And so there's the most story, and the match itself isn't going to be this incredible thing. Again, look at Raw with Chad Gable. Chad Gable can put on some like spectacular matches, and that did not happen on Monday. You could see very clearly that Chad was doing his best to hide Kurt's shortcomings.
What if this match is actually a setup to bring Jason Jordan back?
Oh, I would love that. That would make me so happy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, if Chad Gable were put in the position to do that, that would be so cool. But I doubt it. Based off of my scoops, Jason Jordan probably isn't ever stepping foot in the wrestling ring again, which is unfortunate.
Really unfortunate.
Yeah. But guys, that's enough about Kurt Angle and Baron Corbin. Do you think they even deserved, 12 minutes on main stage? I don't even know about that. Because the match probably isn't even going to go 12 minutes on Mania.
Probably not.
No.
But Kurt Angle deserves all the time in the world. I mean, he did win a gold medal with a broken freaking neck.
He did, but that's in the past, Here on main stage wrestling, we're with the times. We're a very contemporary show.
We're not even with the times. We're pushing forward towards the future.
We're a progressive show, really.
We are the ECW of wrestling radio shows.
That's exactly right.
Minus the barbed wire.
And so progressive that we are, in fact, looking forward to what I do believe at this point will be the crowning of the first ever African-American WWE champion on the grandest stage of them all, if not in general. Dude, this past Tuesday on SmackDown, we saw the second Gauntlet match where Kofi Kingston came out as either number 1 or 2 and lasted for basically the entire thing. And the whole entire stipulation, most people that are listening probably know, but it was if he could defeat all these opponents in a row, it was The Bar, it was Samoa Joe, it was Eric Rowan, and it was Randy Orton. If he could beat all of those men in a Gauntlet match, he would have a spot secured on the card of WrestleMania facing off against Daniel Bryan for the WWE Championship.
Well, actually, to correct you, Mr. McMahon was very careful with the words he chose the previous week. He didn't say that. He just said, if you can do it, you're going to WrestleMania.
Oh, I see.
He didn't guarantee him a championship match. He didn't even guarantee him a place on the card. For all we know, it could have been a ticket.
I mean, it also... we could have had the John Cena spot from last year.
Yeah.
That would have been strange. That's a word to describe it. But to recap this match...
But what's strange is imagine last year you would tell someone, Kofi Kingston is going to win 2 Gauntlet matches in a row from the number 1 position, beating basically the entire upper card of SmackDown.
Taking over half the entire episode of SmackDown as well. It's a 2-hour show.
2 one-hour Gauntlet matches.
Exactly.
Kofi Kingston, of all people, you would get laughed in your face.
And not only that, you say a year ago... 4 months ago, like back in January during the Royal Rumble, people would have laughed in your face. It was a switch that turned in 1 week. It was when Mustafa Ali got replaced in that original Gauntlet match, then Kofi Mania sort of got set into motion. But before that, man, you again, as you said, would have just been laughed at.
I mean,
and rightfully so.
I would have loved to see Mustafa Ali in a similar position where Kofi is now, but I'm so much happier that Kofi is finally getting this opportunity. He keeps saying in every one of his promos 11 years, and he's correct. It's been 11 years. He has been I wouldn't say one of the more underappreciated people on the WWE roster, because if you look in the past 11 years, there's literally a 33% chance that he was a tag team champion.
Fair enough.
At some point.
But as far as,
finally, as a singles
competitor. Yeah. But to go over what happened on SmackDown, because let's not get ahead of ourselves, because Kofi still isn't in this championship match at Mania yet officially, because he ends up beating all those men I mentioned earlier. First, he pins both Cesaro and Sheamus clean. Then Eric Rowan gets himself disqualified. Then Samoa Joe gets rolled up, and then he puts Kofi in the coquina clutch for a few minutes before Randy comes out. He also gets rolled up. It looks like Kofi's going to Mania, as you said. And then Vince McMahon comes right back out, and he announces there's actually one more man that Kofi has to beat in order to go to Mania. That's right. We got that wow once again. And the man that Vince announced that Kofi had to fight was Daniel Bryan. The Planet's champion comes out, and he defeats Kofi pretty handedly. And so the dreams of Kofi Mania are crushed once again. Yeah.
Once again, although you can never give up hope.
Never. No.
If that's one thing that Kofi Kingston has taught us in this story, it's that you can never give up hope. It took 11 years for his dreams to start to come true. But look where he is now.
For sure. And it's pretty obvious
literally
that Kofi
catapulted to the top of the card.
Yes, indeed. And I think it's pretty obvious that Kofi will be getting that spot at Mania. If it doesn't happen, I would question my sort of wrestling fandom and my competence as a wrestling fan. But Vince McMahon as a character has looked pretty dumb in the past. Like he's sort of found himself with egg on his face before, and so I won't be surprised.
Like in our match later today for WrestleMania 26.
That's right, and I won't be surprised if it happens again either this week or next week on SmackDown, because Kofi has to end up in that spot somehow, and whether it's his kids undermining him and putting Kofi in that spot, or Vince just contradicting himself and making the past few weeks seem totally useless, or saying something along the lines of, Kofi, you proved yourself to me. You got it, man. Like, all of those things make Vince look foolish, and I'm sure he'll be fine with it, and Kofi will end up in that spot. Also, one interesting thing. I was listening to the Edge and Christian podcast, I think it was earlier this morning, actually, and Edge mentioned that back at WrestleMania 25, he originally was pushing for Kofi Kingston to be his opponent for the World Heavyweight Championship in the main event of Mania. And I thought that was so interesting, because, as I'm sure you're aware, that did not happen. The match instead was a triple threat match between John Cena, Edge, and The Big Show. But I think it's insane that Kofi very nearly had that spot, 11 years ago now? 11 or 12 years ago? And now is when he's actually getting that opportunity that he was lined up for back then.
I think maybe what the ultimate resolution is going to be, which would be rather controversial but honestly kind of funny, is a lot of people, I've heard people on Twitter and stuff, which of course that's a great source for information. It's just random people on Twitter.
As is Reddit. You're very informed. You have your sources all checked out, man.
It's pretty much just social media, but I have seen people complain that Vince McMahon's motivations and character seem to be almost to a degree racist. Which is a bit of a stretch.
Yeah.
But I think it would be kind of funny if, like, the next week, the New Day just came out with, it's a lawsuit! Yes, it is!
Well, man, we'll get more to lawsuits against Vince McMahon also later in the night. But, I don't know. In 2019, in the world of wrestling, I don't need a WWE storyline to be based around race racism.
We already had that with Booker T and Triple H, and we all know how that turned out.
Well, Kurt Angle's one of his greatest promos of all time. Of course. He would put Jesus in an ankle lock, and he's not a big fan of, as you know, yes,
with air quotes, the black people.
That's what he said. Yes,
which
indeed.
is a fantastic promo, because it made that excellent point of, I can say whatever I want and the WWE universe will still applaud me.
And then you also do have Vince McMahon actually saying the N-word on WWE television.
Of course.
That did happen.
And Booker T saying the N-word on WCW television.
Well, that's more of a slip, and I don't blame him so much for saying that. And then you have sort of Triple H allegedly alluding to the fact that the reason Booker T shouldn't be WWE champion is because he's African American. That sort of happened as well.
Yeah, that's what I was alluding to. What was it? He said, like, people like you don't get to become WWE champion. That's
given pro wrestling's deeply rooted sort of not great past with sort of race relations. I don't need any explicit stories at this point about that sort of stuff because I don't trust them to do it well.
No, it would not. It would be about as heavy-handed and ham-fisted as it possibly could be.
Yeah. Also, speaking of being heavy-handed and ham-fisted, as you just said, did you hear the commentary team after Kofi pinned Randy Orton saying this was the greatest performance in all of SmackDown history? It felt like a bit much. I don't know.
Perhaps a little bit much. There was the Kurt Angle Brock Lesnar Iron Man match, of course.
That's also true, yes. But I just right now it's getting to the point where WWE's almost embracing it too much and getting to that point where they often do, where they get too close to the line of where the fans are comfortable and feeling like it's a natural story, and WWE sort of slapping them on the wrist and telling them, nope, this is us, we're doing this. And I'm very glad that we only have 2 more weeks to go before Mania, because I feel like this could get into Becky Lynch territory, where at this point Becky is just sort of obnoxious, I'd say.
I don't think Becky Lynch is obnoxious. I just think that this storyline is of the apparent women's triple threat that we're heading towards is just so all over the place and so disjointed that I hate to say it, I don't think this deserves to be in the main event anymore.
I mean, I look at the other matches on the card, and
I'm not hyped for it anymore. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
it's
no.
just they had this incredible thing going, and they just overcomplicated it in every single way. And now you need a chalkboard to figure out what's been going on over the past 2 months.
And I don't even mind it being overcomplicated because, again, you can just say it's a deeply layered story. It has a lot of, again, complicated sort of layers. But I just think your main good guy, your Becky Lynch, your new Stone Cold Steve Austin, like she looks really lame now because she's been on a crutch the past 2.5 months, and she didn't want to go to the doctors, and she just went to the doctors anyway.
And then she didn't want to apologize, and she apologized. She still got suspended, and she got unsuspended, and suspended again, and then unsuspended.
She just looks very silly and comes off as...
And Charlotte's just, sitting in a corner going, woo, I'm in here too.
Like, at this point, I am rooting for Charlotte in that match. I'm not joking. Like, Becky Lynch has gotten to the point where it's just sort of grating. I don't know. I can't wait for the story to be done with, and we can see Becky move past it.
I'm fine with Becky being Becky as she is right now if she moves past it. It's I guess it's the problem of dragging out a WrestleMania story since Survivor Series. We're talking how many months at this point? 4, 5, 6?
Yeah, but again, it can be done really well. Like, it's been done in the past where these long-term stories do pay off.
Yeah, but they've been booking it week to week. That's the issue, is there's no long-term arc that is set out to say, here's how we're going to drag this story on until WrestleMania. They've just been making it up as they go along. And
we assume,
at least.
But Becky Lynch isn't on our stories for this week of Main Stage Wrestling on WERW Real College Radio. Yes.
I will still say, though, that I do think Becky Lynch has not been able to have her spotlight without Charlotte Flair yet, and I would really want to see this as a one-on-one match between Becky Lynch and Ronda Rousey.
I at this point, I don't care about that match. I'm being honest. I could not give any less of a care, as it were. But let's turn our attention to another women's match taking place on the greatest, the grandest, the biggest stage of them all in WrestleMania, I assume at least, because it hasn't been announced yet, and that of the women's tag team title match. So
they did announce it, didn't they?
Did they? Oh, I don't...
On Raw, I'm pretty sure it's going to be the Sasha Banks and Bayley versus Natalya and Beth Phoenix.
Well, Beth Phoenix laid out the challenge, but Bayley and Sasha didn't have the chance to accept.
Oh, they didn't accept, okay.
Yes, but, so basically this new story I have labeled as just the state of the women's tag team titles at the moment, because there's been some pretty interesting storytelling on both Raw and SmackDown this week. First, as you said, with Beth Phoenix coming back and announcing that she's coming out of retirement to challenge for these tag team titles.
Which I was really surprised by, because you've been involved in wrestling longer than I have. Did Beth Phoenix retire due to injury?
I don't believe so.
Or was it just because she was getting older and wanted to
I mean, she's not even that old. She's still in her 30s, I believe. Maybe not. Maybe she's like early 40s, but regardless, she can still, I imagine, go in the ring. She's still in amazing shape.
I absolutely agree. I was just shocked because maybe it's because I got into wrestling so comparatively recently that I was like, oh man, I thought, her heyday was a long time ago.
Well, I gotta tell you, Beth Phoenix, for as much as everyone seems to think of her as this legend in wrestling in the past few years, I was watching almost the entirety of her career in WWE because it was pretty short-lived. It only lasted a few years, and she wasn't like that big of a deal because more so because the fact that women weren't much of a show.
Deal.
Yeah, they weren't showcased as much back then. But Beth Phoenix, for being already in the Hall of Fame, I don't know if it's controversial or whatever, but it feels a bit soon. And she was not around for all that long, and she didn't have that great of an impact, I don't think, to sort of warrant that early of a Hall of Fame induction. But I'm fine with her being in there. It's the WWE Hall of Fame, whatever.
You've seen so many current women's wrestlers attribute their love for the game or their style to Beth Phoenix.
I see.
For influencing them and being, one of the few competitors in the Divas era who really could go in the ring.
I guess so. Yeah.
And so I guess you can attribute her as a legend because she is one of the key people who you can pinpoint and say, this is one of the people who got women's wrestling respected again in America.
I disagree with that statement, though, because she was gone by the time. Like, when she left, divas were still, like, Kelly main eventing with Alicia Fox was still a thing when Beth Phoenix left.
But she laid the groundwork. It's not she turned the page, but she said, all right, it's set up. Now you girls can go do it.
I gotcha. That's fair to an extent. So I don't know. I think it's weird and it feels very strange when everyone treats Beth Phoenix like she's this pioneer, sort of, because when I was watching, it didn't feel like that. I don't know. But I'm really cool with her coming back, and I think it's interesting storytelling. I am interested as to why, though, because I'm not too certain why she left back then. But not only does Beth Phoenix announce she's coming out of retirement, but the Iconics upset Bayley and Sasha on SmackDown by pulling off a victory in a tag team match over the champions. Of course, a non-title match, but still, this is making me think that it's probably going to be a multi-team match at Mania, no?
Which could be a cluster,
But just to get as many females on the card as you can, because at this point, I don't even know if the SmackDown Women's Championship is going to be defended.
It might not. And honestly, if it isn't, that's okay, because you've heard the rumors that WrestleMania could be 17 matches long.
Well, okay, I want to tell you something. When I was doing my research for the news this week, man, I came across a news article that said WrestleMania 35 matches, and I legitimately thought they listed all 35 matches for Mania, and I had a miniature heart attack reading it. And then, because I went through the article and I was reading it, there were not 35 matches. So I go back up to the title of the article, and it starts to sink in that, no, it's the 35th WrestleMania. Yeah, which I probably should have been able to connect those dots earlier on, but it seemed like a real thing.
What does it say that we've gotten to the point where that's legitimate and you can actually make that mistake? 17 possible matches. I do not want to dedicate a 9 to 5 to watching WrestleMania.
That's exactly my point. If they can get as many sort of women as they can into this match, like let's say it's a 4-way tag team match with Natty, Beth, the Boston Hug Connection, the Iconics, and Tamina and Nia, that's great. 4 corners, great tag team match, probably elimination. That's fine. It'll be a nice 12-minute match for Mania, gets the titles on the show, and it has enough of a story where I'm interested in it. And I think it's also pretty cool that the storytelling around the tag team titles right now it's so explicit in saying that these are new these are new championships, and we need to establish some credibility behind them.
Yeah, I like that as well.
Bayley and Sasha are outright saying that, we need to prove that these titles mean something, which normally you don't. It's not as on the nose. Normally, it's more like WWE trying to hide it, and they push the title as being the most prestigious thing in the world, even though it's only existed for 1 week.
Or just not push it as prestigious in the slightest, like they did when the Cruiserweight Championship came back.
To be fair,
your first line of champions with TJP and then the Brian Kendrick, and then I think Rich Swann was after that.
Back then, though, those guys were the stars of the division,
Yeah, but think about having TJP and the Brian Kendrick as the stars of your Cruiserweight division. Well, the Brian Kendrick...
I will not have you speak ill of the Brian Kendrick.
I do quite enjoy the Brian Kendrick, and I take that back. But TJP, as your first champion, just doesn't seem like champion shit. He doesn't have that aura.
No, but I don't think he was who they had in mind for who they wanted to be their original champion.
No, he wasn't. I believe the original... Well, first of all, I know that they wanted Will Ospreay in the Cruiserweight Classic, and they couldn't get him. And then I know they wanted Zack Sabre Jr., but he wouldn't sign.
Then
they
also
wanted
Kota Ibushi, who also
wouldn't sign.
Exactly.
So then it was either him or TJP or Grand Metalik, and Grand Metalik didn't speak English yet, so you can't have a champion who can't cut promos in English.
Yeah, I gotcha. So, but guys, I think that's enough for the news right now. We'll be back in just a little bit. We're right here on WERW Real College Radio. We got to play a song for you very quickly. We'll be back in a couple minutes to finish out the news in this week in professional wrestling. Here we go. We are back here on Main Stage Wrestling on WERW Real College Radio. Again, I'm Jacy Cola.
And I'm Sam Gelfand. We hope that you just enjoyed that rendition of Tino Sabatelli's theme.
Oh, man, of course. Does he have a singles theme?
Yeah, The Money Comes.
Okay. So isn't that the... I don't even remember their name anymore. Riddick Moss and Tino Sabatelli? What was their team called?
It was just Sabatelli and Moss.
Was it actually? I thought they had a name.
No, I don't think so. I think it was just the two of them, and they were paired because Moss was a football player at University of Minnesota. Tino Sabatelli actually played on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which is really funny because I came across a couple of articles about Tino Sabatelli basically saying that he may have actually been the worst football player in the history of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
That's unfortunate, because a few years ago on the WWE Network, when they had that show Breaking Ground, where they followed some of the guys at the Performance Center, he seemed like a really cool dude. I liked him, and I sort of wanted him to succeed.
I've said many times, in my adventures around sports broadcasting, that even if you look at the worst players in, like, the NFL, the MLB, NBA, etc., even if you were the worst player at the professional level, you are still better than 99.8% of all players in that sport on the face of the earth.
For sure. And that's not to say he's the worst professional wrestler in the world.
No, he's a pretty good bad guy, and also, for once, WWE changing his name actually worked out, because apparently his given name is Sabby Piscatelli.
Oh, how lovely.
So Tino Sabatelli, a little bit better, actually.
But again, I won't have you disrespecting their theme song, because I did quite enjoy it, man.
No, they have a good theme.
Yes. What is it? Money round... Wait, I don't even... No, rubber bands round stacks. That's the chorus of the theme. I think it's just that repeated.
I just remember, the money comes.
Oh, I see.
And then that's all I remember.
It's about money, and I appreciate it. But Tino Sabatelli and Riddick Moss are not in our top 5 stories of this week in professional wrestling. No.
Have they ever been?
Not quite yet, no. But to be fair, neither have the Ealies, but they're still legends,
Of course.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
this is the Ely Hour.
Our next story does involve the NXT brand, which that team is featured on, not so heavily anymore, but still. And this entire past episode of NXT was based around the main event, which was announced earlier in that very episode, because Triple H comes out, he starts off the show, and he announces that when one man's dream ends in NXT, another's begins. And he announces that Tommaso Ciampa had to vacate his NXT championship due to... He didn't break his neck, did he? Because it was definitely a neck injury, and I know he might never wrestle again.
From what I understand, he has spinal stenosis, which is the same thing that Sheamus has, that Edge had, that Kurt Angle had, but Kurt Angle had experimental surgery that allowed him to keep wrestling for longer.
I mean, Sheamus is still wrestling, so what's up with that?
He is, but that's why they have Cesaro. If you notice in their matches, Sheamus doesn't do the heavy load anymore.
I was unaware. I was very unaware of that.
But unfortunately, it's ended several wrestlers' careers.
I gotcha.
And basically, it limits your movement, and you have to be... Stone Cold Steve Austin, I believe, had a very similar issue. You have to be very careful with what you do from now on, and unfortunately, considering that Tommaso Ciampa specializes in that cruiserweight style, he's going to have to tone it down when he comes back.
I gotcha, for sure. And again, unfortunately, had to vacate his NXT championship, and then Triple H announces that what was originally supposed to be in the main event at NXT TakeOver New York was Tommaso Ciampa versus Johnny Gargano for the 4th time main eventing a TakeOver show, which, I gotta be honest, not excited for. If that match had happened, that would have been so underwhelming.
I still wouldn't have complained.
I would have complained. And I don't like complaining about wrestling because I enjoy it. I don't want to be upset about it.
Yeah, it's the 4th time, but the 3 previous times they put on either 5-star matches or close to 5-star matches. They're magic together.
I get it, and I would probably love to see that match again in the future, but not right now. how many takeovers are there every year? Maybe 5, maybe 6. I don't think 6. I think it's 5. And they main evented 4 out of those 5 this past year. No? Something along those lines. Those numbers are off. Whatever. 3 out of the 5. Who knows? Point is, I don't need to see that match again. I've seen it enough. In the future, when there's more of a story, like more interesting and new of a story behind it, I would love to see it, of course. So, again, I don't want to ever see anything bad happen to a wrestler. I don't want to see anyone ever get injured, especially someone as great as Tommaso Ciampa. But if it saves me from seeing that match again, there's some sort of silver lining, maybe, I guess. And Triple H announces that Johnny Gargano will maintain his spot in the main event, challenging for the NXT Championship. But now he will be fighting a man that will be determined later on in the show in a 5-way match for the NXT Championship involving Matt Riddle, involving Aleister Black, Velveteen Dream, Adam Cole, and Ricochet. Those are the 5 men. Ricochet's the one I forgot earlier. So,
Earlier off microphone.
yes, earlier off microphone, but
during the break.
Who's counting that?
Here's what happened during the commercial break.
There's a 50-50 chance they heard us during the commercial break anyway. I'm not a board op, you know?
50-50 chance of winning.
Yeah, that's right.
Something, Scott Steiner.
That's right. So, the match ends up taking place later in the night. There's only one match on the entire card, I believe, and... Oh,
I just noticed the door's open.
Oh, the door is open. Yeah, okay, Sam is getting up and closing that, but this entire...
The door is no longer open.
No, it is not. This entire episode of NXT is based around the door opening for one of these 5 men into the main event, a spot of
Brilliant.
NXT TakeOver New York. And again, you just have Kathy Kelly going around the locker room and interviewing everyone she can find, from the Forgotten Sons to Kona Reeves, just because their opinions are so valuable about the NXT Championship.
He has the finest opinions.
And he did, in fact, inform us that the main event, because he's not involved in it, would not be the finest. And I believe that did hold true by the time the event rolled around. But I will say, despite it not being the finest, it was still incredible and such an enjoyable match. And the finish was insane. And the victor was Adam Cole, who will now be going on to face Johnny Gargano for the NXT Championship in the main event of, as I've said so many times in the last few minutes, NXT TakeOver New York. Not
Baby.
Brooklyn. Not Brooklyn at all. It's NXT TakeOver New York. Get it right.
Because it's not going to be in Brooklyn, because it's so confusing.
No,
MetLife
it's in Brooklyn.
Well,
It's not in MetLife Stadium.
Well, no, honestly, I thought because MetLife Stadium, right next to that is the Izod Center, where the New Jersey Nets used to play before they
That's
played
where
in
they had
Brooklyn.
WrestleMania access back in WrestleMania 29, but nope, they're keeping it in Barclays. Yep.
Just changing the name.
Yep.
Sure. Okay.
If they named a show in New Jersey NXT TakeOver New York, you have no idea how just... I don't know how to complete that thought even.
Unfortunately, I've been a New York Jets fan my entire life. MetLife Stadium is where the Jets and the New York Giants play.
I see.
It's in the Meadowlands, which is basically it's just across the river from New York City. It's
Okay.
like it's close, but it's still in New Jersey.
I gotcha.
So I still don't I understand why it's there. It's because real estate inside of New York City is so impossible to get that you can't build a football stadium in there. But you still want to call them the New York Jets and Giants, and you're still calling it TakeOver New York. And
it is TakeOver New York.
Well, it's
TakeOver within New York.
but,
That makes sense.
They're billing this WrestleMania and the WrestleMania. Where was it? Which one was in MetLife Stadium before? It was Undertaker and CM Punk that year. Was
That
it
is
28?
correct. That was 29.
29, yeah. So 29 and 35 are both being billed as in New York.
Well, New York, New Jersey. It's a very small. They get a 50-50 billing, but New York comes first.
Why not just say, welcome to WrestleMania, tri-state area?
Because then you involve Connecticut, and no one cares about them.
But that's where Titan Towers is.
Yeah, I guess so. And by the way, another news story: they are getting.
I did see that.
Yes, they are. They are leaving the premises of Titan Towers, and they're finding a new location in Hartford, Connecticut. Which I had.
Stamford, I think.
I don't know why I said Hartford. You're absolutely right. It is Stamford. I'm a dumb person. That's the problem there. But back to the NXT Championship match. Adam Cole, and the reason I know that it's not taking place in New Jersey is because Adam Cole, in an interview before the 5-man match took place, he said that it's so poetic because Barclays Center is where he debuted just 2 years before with the Undisputed Era, where he attacked Drew McIntyre from behind, and now it's the place where he will be crowned NXT champion. And so, again, I think it's pretty cool. It's an exciting match. Adam Cole, Johnny Gargano. They sort of stumbled into already having a story behind it, which they were very, very lucky for. And I'm excited for it much more than I would have been Tommaso Ciampa, Johnny Gargano. Any final thoughts on that?
They're going to tear the house down, and...
Oh, it's also a 2 out of 3 falls match.
Fantastic. And what I'm also really excited about is that if you watched Halftime Heat, you would have seen that Adam Cole is apparently now allowed to pull off the Panama Sunrise.
Absolutely. No, maybe that's only in the Performance Center, you know? I don't know if it applies to any other buildings.
Perhaps, but if it does apply to the Barclays Center,
yes.
Can you imagine, because I don't know if that entire arena will have watched Halftime Heat, the reaction to see a Panama Sunrise pulled off in an NXT ring, I'm sure, would be extraordinary.
In front of a WrestleMania crowd. Yes. Yes, indeed. But, guys, our final news story, we're going to have to run through it super quickly. David Starr, a pretty popular independent wrestler. He now lives in Europe. He moved over from the United States to, what was it, England? Someplace over there.
Something like that. I don't know. He's a fellow tribesman, so, you know, I'm cool with him.
Not in our hemisphere, it really doesn't matter. Isn't that right?
Well, I think Europe still is in the Western Hemisphere.
No, I mean, the if we split the Earth in the fourths, you know,
in our quadrant.
Yes, in our quadrant. If it's not there, just who could care, you know? But this is an interesting story.
You've just upset a lot of online wrestling fans who watch NJPW.
Well, that's unfortunate. They're close enough, you know, like that it figures in there somewhere. I don't know, but. David Starr, famous independent wrestler, he is going to be challenging for the Ring of Honor Championship in Israel in a couple of weeks or months, whatever it is.
In Tel Aviv, which is a very nice place. I was there once.
And it is for the Israeli Pro Wrestling Association. They're partnering up with Ring of Honor and putting on this championship matchup over there for this one-night event, this one-time spectacular. And David Starr, to promote this match, to get people excited for it, he's a pretty amazing promo. I'm not...
Oh, yeah.
I don't feel... any reservations in saying that. He's really great, and he cuts this entire promo criticizing Ring of Honor, well, not Ring of Honor, but their parent company, Sinclair Broadcasting, for their political leanings, because they're pretty conservative, and I guess their stance on Israel doesn't necessarily line up with his, because he's a Jewish man. That's sort of his entire character as well.
Yeah,
his name is David Starr.
Yeah, and he has the gold star on his trunks and stuff, and
yeah, so He basically calls them out for
hairy.
all this stuff, and he pokes sort of that bear in Sinclair Broadcasting and saying, your worst nightmare is going to come true. A progressive Jewish man becoming your world champion. And, I mean, sort of rightfully so. Sinclair wasn't thrilled about it. This is sort of their championship. This is
it's like
their
what Paul
company.
Heyman did with late ECW when he would attack TNN in the ring. Mm-hmm. Had Don Callis, I believe, play a TNN executive who would basically keep coming out and telling ECW that he was going to shut the show down.
Oh, wow. The Jackal. Such an incredible...
Because TNN really wanted to shut ECW down. They did that show no favors. So, honestly, I don't even think they watched or cared at that point, though.
Well... Bottom line is, Ring of Honor, they have David Starr pull this video down, and, I mean, just based off of what I've seen from him on social media, he's not the type to sort of capitulate in these scenarios and sort of give in to those sort of requests, but it's, I guess, reported that he did it to sort of help out the company, the Israeli Pro Wrestling Association, so they don't lose all this money from having the match taken off the card and losing Jay Lethal and the Ring of Honor title. So he obliged, he took the video down, and now it's a big story, and now way more people are interested in it. One, because the promo was great, and two, because so many more people saw the promo because it got taken down. And again, I don't think it's the wisest move in the world for him as far as his career goes, but he's a smart guy. He knows what he's doing. If he thinks it's important enough and that he needs to do it, by all means, dude. But don't be surprised if you don't get signed or ever partnered up with Ring of Honor ever again, you know?
You know, it makes me think about how David Starr is a great promo. Paul Heyman, of course, is possibly one of the best promos ever. There's a long line of when Jews are involved in professional wrestling, promo skills do tend to come about, and it made me think about something. If I can go on a brief tangent.
I mean, we're overtime, man. We gotta get to a break right here on WWW Real College Radio, but very fast.
I'll wrap it up really quickly. When I was younger, I played a lot of Little League sports, or Little League baseball, and I was always absolutely terrible. And every time I would come home after going 0 for 2, 0 for 3, whatever, my mom would always tell me, don't worry, Sam, we're Jews. We don't play sports, we talk about them.
Fair enough.
And it seems that translates into professional wrestling as well.
And that is the moral of the story. We, right here on Main Stage Wrestling, embrace all the stereotypes. So, we will be back very quickly right here on WERW Real College Radio. This is a song called Callin' by some dude named Alec Bailey, and we'll be right back to get into a match. A match from WrestleMania 26 between Vince McMahon and Bret Hart. We'll be back, guys.
This break can take its time. It's all right.
We are back here on Main Stage Wrestling, guys. Again, that was the news that we just went over for the past 50 minutes, and we're about to get into this match that probably deserves more than just the 10 we're about to give it, and that of Bret Hart versus Vince McMahon from WrestleMania 26, which took place on March 28th, 2010, nearly 9 years ago to the day.
At University of Phoenix Stadium in Glendale, Arizona, which confusingly is the home of the Arizona Cardinals, as University of Phoenix does not actually have any athletic programs.
Now, what I'm going to do this week, because we're so limited on time, is I'm going to run through the background, then we'll get our thoughts on it, then we'll run through the match, and then we'll get our thoughts on that too. Does that sound good with you?
That's fair.
Okay, so the background. Guys, Bret Hart is coming back. This is 12 years removed from the Montreal Screwjob, in which, if you're listening to the show, you probably are aware of what that is. And I guess time heals all wounds. Bret Hart has decided enough time has passed. He's okay with it. He wants to make amends with WWE.
Money heals all wounds as well.
That is also pretty true. And this is also 3 years after he released his book, Hitman, My Life into the Cartoon World of Professional Wrestling, which was incredible. If you haven't read that, you absolutely have to because it's great. And so Bret Hart signs with the WWE at the end of 2009 and appears on the very first episode of Raw in 2010. And on this episode, he comes out and he makes amends with Shawn Michaels and what both men since have described as like a legitimate, authentic moment where they did put their past behind them and they moved past it. That's one half of the Montreal Screwjob just out of the way. He's good. Now Bret Hart has to make amends with the owner, the CEO, the billionaire Vincent Kennedy McMahon, the one who orchestrated the entire Montreal Screwjob. And Vince isn't so easy to sort of give in and apologize to Bret. And on this very same episode of Raw, it looks like they're going to bury the hatchet. Vince, he gets past his initial stubbornness, and at the end of the segment, they shake hands, and they raise each other's hands as well, and it looks like it's a great moment for Bret. He can finally put all this past him and be involved with the company in a way that he probably should have been, rightfully so. And then, while they're holding each other's hands in the air, Vince McMahon turns on Bret Hart and just beats the hell out of him for a couple of minutes. And
kicks him in the grapefruits.
That's right, and this leads to a couple of months of just back and forth between those two men. And then there's one episode of Raw where Bret decides it's time to hang up the boots. He's had enough. He thought he would come back and this would be all a great time. It's not. Vince is making it miserable. And on his way out of the arena the night he decides to retire, he gets hit by a car. And so now Vince has the genius idea to call him out the next week on Raw and challenge him to a match at WrestleMania. He says that Bret Hart, he's not going to accept it because he has no heart and that he's a coward.
And then eventually Bret Hart is like, sure, you want it, you're on. And then they sign the contract, and then Bret Hart's actually like, ta-da, I didn't injure myself.
Yeah, the car accident was a ruse, I guess. And he doesn't just want a wrestling match at WrestleMania. No, Bret Hart wants a no-holds-barred fight at WrestleMania, and that's what he gets. And then he also mentions that when he reveals to Vince that he isn't actually injured, he's like, if you try to break this contract, which they'd already signed, I will sue you for everything you're worth, blah, 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 blah. And so that's the background of this match. It's all just a 12-year story finally having its culmination, sort of, kind of. And I thought it was interesting on commentary when Bret was coming to the ring, Michael Cole pointed out the last match Bret Hart had at WrestleMania was WrestleMania 13 against Stone Cold Steve Austin, which is pretty great track record as far as I'm concerned with WrestleManias.
Yeah, it's, of course, we all know that Bret Hart is one of the greatest professional wrestlers of all time.
Yes.
He could drag anyone to a good match, literally anyone, but we're talking someone, at this point, he can't take a bump anymore. He has his concussion issues. He cannot have offense put on him. Vince McMahon is not a trained wrestler, and at this point, the best there is looking a lot more like the best there was.
Wow. But, guys, Bret Hart at this point, he's 52 in 2010. In today's world of wrestling, that's not that crazy to see someone wrestling at 52. You look at someone like The Undertaker or Chris Jericho, and they're still putting on amazing matches at that age. So, when you look at the shape that Bret Hart's in back then, it's pretty, astounding how just beat up and just torn apart he is, and it's a pretty sad sight,
Keep
really.
in mind, he had to retire in about 2001 because of concussion issues.
That's
he literally could not go at
That's
this
fair.
point.
Also, I want to point out, this was 12 years removed from the Montreal Screwjob. I started watching wrestling just about 12 years ago, maybe like 11 and a half at this point. And the landscape of WWE back in 2008 compared to the landscape of WWE today, it's pretty similar. You can see how you can get to point A to point B. It's like, okay, that makes sense. A lot of the same guys are here. The image is the same. It feels like the same show. If you go from 1997 to 2010, it's an entirely different world. Nothing is the same. It's so strange how much changed in that 10-year period. And it was so strange to me to put it in those terms. Yeah. But guys, is there anything else you want to touch on before we get into what actually happened as the match unfolded?
No, we should move along with that. If I may summarize it for a little bit. Okay, so eventually Vince McMahon is like, it's actually going to be a lumberjack match. I have bought off the Hart, and they're going to surround the ring. And by the way, Bruce Hart is going to become the special guest referee. And then Bret Hart is like, actually, you see, think that.
First, Vince makes the announcement that first Bret screwed Bret, then it was Vince screwed Bret. But tonight will forever be known as the night that Vince and the Hart family screwed Bret.
So the Harts come out and they surround the ring, and then Bret is like, well, you think that, but actually, they got paid up front, which means they're going to help me, because they don't like you. You have just secured your own doom. And then I wrote down that Bret screwed Vince literally 4 seconds before he said that in his promo.
Yeah, and then Bret also says there's nothing better than a double cross, and then reviews, actually, tonight will forever be remembered as the night that Bret screwed Vince.
So, to fast forward through this match as briefly as I can, literally what happens is Bret Hart gets 30 seconds of offense, throws Vince out of the ring, lets the Lumberjacks, especially the new Hart Foundation out
including
there,
Natalia, Davey Boy Smith, and Tyson Kidd,
do most of the beating so he can take a break. They throw him back in. He does another 30 seconds of offense. He throws him back out. And keep in mind, we're talking the greatest technical wrestler of all time is Punchy Kicky.
Yeah, it's not
great.
Not
even a hammerlock.
It's not great.
So then they break out a crowbar. Vince McMahon brings it out. He doesn't get to use it.
There's a diving heart attack to the outside from Tyson Kidd, which was incredible.
It was pretty great. But Vince McMahon...
Wait, first, when they're on the outside of the ring, Bruce Hart, the referee, who is on the side of Bret Hart, it's a no-holds-barred match, mind you, starts counting. He starts counting Vince McMahon out, which, one, it's a no-holds-barred match. You're not supposed to count. And two, you're on Bret's side. You don't want Vince to get counted out. Like, you want him to get beat up, but go on.
So then Vince McMahon brings in a crowbar, doesn't even get to use it. Bret Hart takes the crowbar, the worst crowbar shots I've ever seen, because it's like he wants to make contact, but the swings are so short, and you can see that there's no power behind it.
Also, while Vince grabs the crowbar from under the ring, and all the Hart family runs away, because there are like 10 people beating up on him.
I love this. They run away.
They start screaming that Vince is a coward for grabbing a crowbar.
They ran away, and they call him a coward.
Matt Stryker is the only rational man in that building.
Well, actually, I disagree. Jerry Lawler is as well, because he says during the match, this is almost sad.
That's very fair. That's fair.
So, yeah, then Bret Hart breaks out a chair. He hits Vince a bunch of times. He teases the sharpshooter 3 times. I'm just trying to speed through this.
While the chair shots are going on, goddamn Bruce Hart just stands in front of Hardcam. He's blocking the action for a good 3 minutes. He stands in front of Hardcam.
So, Bret Hart throughout this match teases the sharpshooter 3 times, and the first time gets the crowd to get on their feet and start cheering. The second time a little more so. The third time he actually finally puts on the sharpshooter, but no one cares because it's the boy that cried sharpshooter.
That's right. This is like the 6th time he goes for it. He finally hits it. The Hart family starts pounding on the apron.
When Jerry Lawler says this is uncomfortable, it's almost hard to watch, that he is reflecting the entire WWE universe. Vince McMahon taps out literally immediately. This was a painful 11 minutes. It was, the last match we watched for this, Vince Russo versus Booker T, was bad. This was the one thing that's worse than bad. It was boring.
That was so slow. Which, I mean, you have a 52-year-old dude that can barely walk against a 64-year-old billionaire that's not a wrestler. You can't really expect that much. But then you don't put it on your biggest show of the year. Also, just a couple more points. Michael Cole at one point in the match says, Vince McMahon is begging and pleading for mercy. Vince McMahon's mouth is shut, and then 30 seconds later, Vince starts saying, please, Bret, stop. So, I don't know what's up with Michael Cole, but he can see into the future, apparently. And then also, at the end of the match, after Vince taps out, Bret Hart steps over the stomach of Vince McMahon, like, all disrespectfully. And then Bruce Hart does the same thing. And then you see Mike Chioda run in the ring and start screaming at Bruce Hart to stop. And it's fantastic. And Bruce Hart is my favorite person in the world after this match.
I have in my notes as a closing thing that it was a painful 11 minutes, and that writing the notes was the only thing that made that time go by. If my phone was taken from me and I had to watch this match sitting on my hands like the crowd did, it would have felt like it went 20 minutes.
I don't blame the crowd, but also, this was, I want to point out, similar to your notes right here, my big takeaway, this was the first match that I was able to take all my notes, very extensive notes, while the match was going on. It was that slow. I was able to do like play-by-play
I did not have to pause
text.
it once.
No, not one pause did I do, and I got the entire thing written down, because it's just that slow. But guys, this has been Main Stage Wrestling. Let us find out what our match is for next week that we will be covering.
Why don't we just put that on our social media so they have to check it out?
Ooh, that's fair. Nah, we'll just do it now.
Okay, we'll do it
now.
Yeah.
The match that we'll be watching and covering next week.
I'm praying for a good one.
Randy Savage versus Ricky the Dragon Steamboat from WrestleMania 3.
It's a good one!
One of the most famous matches of all time. Fantastic. We went through 2 weeks of torture, all for this. Hopefully it's great. And guys, we will be back next week. This has been Main Stage Wrestling. I'm Jacy. You are?
I'm Sam Gelfand.
And find us at Mainstage SU. This is WERW Real College Radio, and we'll be back next week at the same time and the same place. Goodbye, everybody.